but didn't. The whole thing is falling apart. Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tousi TV, your global news channel. I'm Tousi, and this is your latest news update, this time coming from France. Yes, the capital, Paris, and a number of other cities have been seeing absolute mayhem caused by the political left and the Islamists. The coalition between the two sides is creating some trouble for Emmanuel Macron's government. Of course, the political right are also extremely angry with the French government, but Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella from National Rally have come out to defend and support the police in France against the troublemakers, even though obviously they still have similar problems with Emmanuel Macron and his new prime minister when it comes to their domestic policies. We're going to give you guys all the updates. We're going to give you guys some videos coming from France. First things first. The number of arrests has been escalating since yesterday. Over 300 have now been detained by the police, not just in Paris, but also in Marseille, Lyon, and other cities across the country. First things first, I mean, you have a problem with Emmanuel Macron not wanting to have an election, so he keeps picking new prime ministers. As well as the political right, the French socialists are now back from political exile, demanding that the new prime minister, Lecornu, ditches Emmanuel Macron's pension reforms, and obviously they want to increase taxation, including wealth tax and everything else, and they want to basically get rid of the budget cuts, which again is about 44 billion euros. Now, if you don't really have a solution as a socialist, it's probably best for you to keep quiet because the national debt is increasing, the deficit is completely insane, there's no money left for people in the country, but they think they can just print more money and tax. The whole thing started as what we call largely peaceful march, and with the Islamists and socialists coming out. A massive rally in Paris started as part of a nationwide block everything, they call it, block everything protest movement. And the debt in France has now reached 3.3 billion euros, 3.3 trillion euros, or about 116% of the GDP. Let's go and see how it started. You see the Palestinian flags and the communist flags as usual. Another day in France. So this is fine, this is just a protest, this is just a march before they started attacking the police. There we go, socialist balloons. Revolution. I'm going to explain the problem here. So the political left in France, who have obviously resulted in a number of revolutions in the country and a number of major changes, they seem to be wanting a permanent revolution without having an actual solution. Now, the outgoing interior minister has reported that 476 protests actually are happening across the country since yesterday, and they don't seem to be having any solution. Let's go back to the next video. As usual. Now the numbers are huge as well, because it initially started with about 500,000 people out there, but it did reach about over 800,000, close to 1 million people essentially protesting, but not in just one city. Obviously the number of major cities across France, opposing government's proposed budget cuts. Again, one thing is, if you keep changing prime ministers without being able to have a different solution, or at least try to explain why budget cuts are necessary if you have to go with them, without just saying, well, we're also going to be printing money, we're also going to be borrowing more money, and we're still going to be raising taxes anyway, you are alienating both the political right, the political left, the business community, the trade unions, every single group. So Emmanuel Macron has managed to basically bring everyone together, even though in this situation, with the Block Everything protest movement, the National Rally are not too happy about the left-wingers hijacking it and causing violence. Let's go to the next clip. There you go. Police are fighting back now. Now, see, she knows she's on camera, so she's playing the victim as usual. But a number of police officers have also been injured, which is not really being talked about by the communist side, because it doesn't really help their narrative. But if there's a camera in front of them, they have to be the victim, as I said. Now, schools across these major cities have been closed because of the strikes. Trains have also stopped operating. Hospitals are stretched thin across France. This was obviously a nationwide timeout for President Macron and his policies. Now, trade unions, usually the different groups on the left, attack each other. They're very divided, but this time they locked arms, as they called it, over the policies. This is obviously for the left. It could be a powerful moment because the National Rally are still trying to basically be seen as the best alternative. So the left are trying to create a coalition to oppose Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella. So these are the trade unions, obviously, with the strikes. Now, clashes were initially reported in Paris, in Lyon, and in Nantes as well. Let's quickly go and see what happened. Insanity. Now, we have to also talk about the reaction coming from the political right, especially National Rally. They didn't want to be seen, obviously, as defending the government, because they're not. But the reality is that they don't want to intentionally or unintentionally support the political left taking over the streets. Jordan Bardella said, "All my support to the law enforcement officers and the police who are attacked by the far-left militias that are ruining social mobilization. The message from the state must be clear. Anyone who attacks our police officers must immediately sleep in prison." That's Jordan Bardella, the future of the National Rally and Marine Le Pen's party. This was also reported by the Reuters who were on the ground, the next clip, which again shows the wider problem, not just for Macron's government, but actually for anybody who's going to be in government next time. Even if Marine Le Pen's party take over, you still have to deal with this mess.
On en a marre de payer pour les autres.
We're tired of paying for others. I'm going to talk about my case. I've been with the post office for 33 years. I earn a net salary of 1,400 euros, so it's a struggle. We can't make ends meet, so it has to stop, and those who have the money...
The thing is, they keep thinking that they have a solution. We already had this socialist experiment in France with Hollande. When Hollande was in charge, about 15 years ago, the taxes being raised and the money being printed resulted in obviously those who could pay taxes and those who had a little bit more money and those who were entrepreneurs. What did they do? They left the country. They all moved to either the UK or the US or Canada. And that experiment didn't work. France almost went bankrupt. They want to do the same thing. Obviously, the situation is not good for anybody. There's a cost of living crisis. Obviously, public services, there's a massive burden on them. But at the same time, there's a national debt. You can't necessarily just say, okay, well, all we should do is just basically print more money and raise taxes, and we shouldn't do any sort of level of cuts. Nobody's in favor, no normal person is in favor of cutting frontline services, because that's going to affect everybody. But there's a lot of waste, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of benefits being given to a lot of migrants. There's a massive wave of illegal migration and mass migration, all the benefits, everything that's being given away, the entitlements. If you fix those things, there is an opportunity. But then they don't want to talk about this, the socialists. They're just going to want to moan and whine and say, oh, well, what about me? What about me? What should I do? Well, what about the rest of the country? Anyway, Emmanuel Macron, in order to please the protesters, because obviously you had the socialists as well as the Islamists with the Palestinian flags, he keeps trying to pander to them. It doesn't work. They're not going to support you or your government. He posted this. As the country was in chaos, burning, Macron posted this. 43 years after the latest major anti-Semitic attack, which had plunged France into mourning by killing 6 people and injuring 19. A suspect whose arrest and extradition France had relentlessly demanded has been arrested in the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria, by Palestinian services. He then said, I salute the excellent cooperation with the Palestinian Authority. We are working together towards a swift extradition. While some of the suspects are to be brought before the assize court, this is an additional step for justice and truth. I think of all the families who have carried the pain of waiting for so long. France does not forget. It always sanctions and punishes. Justice will prevail. This makes no sense because the French government's approach is to reward terrorism. When October the 7th happened, the reaction from Emmanuel Macron was to reward the Palestinian side, who invaded Israel and kidnapped people and killed people, saying, okay, well done, you've done a great job, we're going to give you a Palestinian state. He continues to cooperate, as he says it, with the Palestinian Authority. Yet you still have all the people on the street still trying to bring down his government because it doesn't work. Stop pandering to a bunch of barbaric, backwards nutters. Now, Marine Le Pen has had enough with all this nonsense. She said that we have been advocating for years for a constitutional referendum that will allow the French people to regain control of the migration policy. While obviously Jordan Bardella also criticized the protesters, this is what Le Pen said.
Sur l'immigration, Madame Le Pen, est-ce que vous appelez à voter la pétition pour un référendum sur l'immigration?
Mais moi, je n'appelle pas à voter, j'appelle à voter. Les gens sont libres de voter la pétition, mais il y a 11 millions de gens déjà qui, en quelque sorte, par un moyen extrêmement direct, ont fait savoir qu'ils considéraient que l'immigration telle qu'elle existe aujourd'hui en France n'est plus soutenable. Ce sont ceux qui ont voté pour le Rassemblement national. Voilà. Donc tout ce qui va dans le sens de la défense d'un référendum sur le sujet de l'immigration, je ne peux évidemment que m'en réjouir, puisque, vous le savez, nous-mêmes proposons depuis longtemps un référendum, et même un référendum constitutionnel sur l'immigration, car nous considérons que c'est un des seuls moyens de véritablement reprendre la maîtrise du contrôle de cette immigration. Donc tout ce qui va dans ce sens va dans le bon sens.
She's absolutely spot on. There has to be the will of the people must be respected, and they can't respect it until they actually ask what the public are thinking. We know what they're thinking, but they have to do it officially, either through a referendum or actually allow a party like National Rally to get a democratic mandate instead of trying to block it every single time. There's some reaction. We got Ivan in the super chat saying, why do the police not have a white flag? It's interesting, the French attitude, especially essentially the so-called anti-establishment French, so the political left. Their problem is that they become extremely brave when it comes to their own country and their own governments. We've seen it for the past 200 years or so. They're always very strong and thuggish. They cause riots, they cause revolutions. They've had about 50 million revolutions over the last 200-300 years. But when it comes to the external enemies, they seem to be wanting to always surrender. This is the left-wing side who call themselves, when it comes to the domestic issues, they are anti-establishment. But externally, on the international stage, they are basically the establishment. They represent the establishment. So when you've had in the 1930s, 1940s, with the rise of National Socialists in Germany, that was not obviously an easy reaction, but there was a surrender. There was a representation, by the way. It wasn't necessarily just the French government saying, well, on behalf of the people, we surrender. The whole thing fell apart. The military and big chunks of society in France. But now you have it differently because you now have the soft takeover of France. You have an occupation by North African and the Middle Eastern migrants, but they've been welcomed by the establishment. So this is also a new way of surrender from the French establishment side and the left-wing mentality. Bruce says that the form of France will be everywhere if you don't ban Islam. Everywhere. Well, yeah, don't forget Napoleon. He went on a rampage. Yeah, I think to be fair, after what they experimented with Napoleon, the days where France was supposed to become strong and stable, as Theresa May would call it, everything went wrong. A lot of people talk about the impact of the National Socialism experiment in Germany in the 30s and 40s, and what it did afterwards to Germany, even after the country basically recovered and everything else. You can see the impact of it on a societal level. Actually, on a different level, you can see post-Napoleon France, where it's had ups and downs, but it's been massively affected. Because, it was a humiliating thing. A lot of people around the world always make a joke about the French establishment surrendering to Adolf and his gang in Germany. But jokes aside, there was a reason that that humiliation keeps being talked about. Anyway, leave it to the French government to find new ways to surrender. But there has already been a surrender, essentially, to the Palestinian cause and to mass migration. That's why people like Le Pen and Bardella are saying enough is enough. We don't have to live like this. There's still a huge chunk of good, patriotic people in France who want France to actually be great. There's still a massive potential for the country, despite the fact that trillions are in debt. There's no money left for the government to do anything, any government to do anything, but you recover. You can always recover, even if you hit rock bottom. Now, while we are here, obviously, you guys can also get access to our chat forum, in case you didn't know, by becoming a member of Tousi TV Plus by scanning the QR code or going on Tousi.tv or find the link in the description. Of course, you can also download the Tousi TV app from your app stores. Let's quickly see what's going on here. There's a reaction in the chat forum. Paramedic Patriot says a Tousi TV song must stay. It's brilliant. See, we have feedback from the viewers. People are happy. Despite being a cheesy 1980s sitcom intro. All right. Tara says, how many illegal migrants arrived today? For F's sake. Well, it depends where, because more arrive in France every day. They are just about able to get rid of some of them to push them to come to England. But they still have a massive numbers compared to even the UK. They just unload some of the burden on Britain because the British government says, yeah, sure, bring some of them here, everything's fine. But the situation in France is even worse than the UK. UK is next, basically. Lisbeth says, make France great again? I absolutely agree, but you need to have the political will to do this. And again, there has to be compromises, because when you have populist movements like National Rally, you have to make concessions, because in order for populist movements to succeed, you are going to have to bring, for example, the free marketeers, but also the more trade union leaning people. And that's what Le Pen and Bardella are trying to do, which means technically on paper, someone like me would agree with a number of policies coming from National Rally, but I will also disagree with a number of others. But there has to be consensus. There has to be a time eventually in the West for people to understand you cannot back and support any political party based on Puritan mentality. No political party, no political leader will be able to give you 100% what you want. You have to make compromises. And at least National Rally is honest about it. You know, they have some policies that are slightly more left-leaning, not necessarily full socialists, but you know, they are willing to, for example, introduce a new tax or perhaps nationalize one tiny industry, but they're still more pro-business than the actual political left. They're actually still more pro-business than even Emmanuel Macron's centrist movement. So those who want to pick a party or politician based on, okay, they have to stay and do everything that I want. You can't do that. You can't pick any party or any politician that will give you 100%. You have to pick your priorities. They go with the values rather than just policies. Their set of fundamental values. What do they actually stand for? Then you can debate policy differences. And the best thing you can do is to join the political party, for example. If you really want to be active, join National Rally or join the Tory party or join Reform UK, whatever party, or Advance, and then try to have the debate internally and try to push for your policies as long as the framework, which is the actual values of that movement, stays the same. And it can't just be based on rhetoric. I hate the fact that people say, well, anybody that says make Britain great again or make France great again, that's good, I'm going to vote. No, that's just words. That means nothing. Like tomorrow, Bernie Sanders could stand and says, make America great again. But what he means by great, it means socialist. Jeremy Corbyn could say that, although Jeremy Corbyn is being cancelled now. Maybe Zara Sultana could say that. That means nothing. Just because somebody says, or just somebody says, oh, I'm going to fly the flag, I'm proud of the country. Being proud of the country is not good enough. Because again, there was a man who was proud of the country in the 1930s. He actually got the vote in 1933. Didn't manage to form a majority, but still somehow took over Germany and became a dictator. Adolf was flying the flag. He wanted to make Germany great again, but his socialist policies imploded. But, you know, of course, no one talks about that. Everyone keeps talking about the autobahns. The national debt was insane. Ivan says that we love cheese. Sorry, Sally says, the intro was the best. The 80s is my favorite era. Yes, the 80s is the best. Although I'm still slightly more nostalgic when it comes to the 90s. I was born in the 80s, but actually 90s was my era. I see the 90s as the last chapter of stability. The perception of stability. Everything was happy. Everything seemed happy. You know, brought down the Soviet Union. Everybody was happy now. And then there was a boom before the crash. And then the 2000s happened, and then everything changed. Obviously, it's all subjective because I did have this debate with you guys on the channel a while ago, a couple of years ago, and it really depends on what era you were growing up in, or what era was your best as a person. Because a lot of people who are slightly older than me would say, no, the 1960s was the best. Because for them, obviously, that was the beginning of change from the 50s, but also before the craziness of the 70s and everything else that happened. But for different reasons. Obviously, the liberal side will celebrate the sexual revolution, but for the more conservative-leaning side, that was still a more peaceful time. And before the rise of tech. Wings of Love says, when did the left get so radical about immigrants, and why? This is nuts. Radical? You mean in favor of immigrants, right? I don't get the question. I think, well, the political left became more radicalized, mostly because over the last couple of decades, they are a little bit confused. They are struggling with the fact that they are actually the establishment now. When you look at the late 19th century and early 20th century, all different types of political left, whether that was the French liberals or whether it was the communists, Marxists, all the movements that were basically anti-establishment. Back then, they were anti-establishment because establishment was not on their side. But now, over the last 2-3 decades, longer than that, because they know they can't win elections, not all the time. They can't fully win at elections in most of the Western countries. because no normal Western country is going to vote for communism. But what they do, they manipulate. They win a little bit by saying we're just social democrats. You know, we still believe in democracy. You know, we're not that bad. But they have elected politicians based on that, and they have also taken over cultural institutions, the media, academia. They are everywhere. And then these days, even some corporations, because of DEI hiring. And they are struggling with the fact that they are actually the establishment, but their rhetoric is still stuck in the 20th century, 19th century, saying, yeah, we have to fight the power. Well, what is power? Oh, it's us, isn't it? That's why they're becoming angrier and more radicalized, because they're also entitled. Because they've taken over all these groups and institutions, they genuinely believe, well, everybody should listen to us. So when you have someone like Charlie Kirk just trying to have a conversation saying, you're wrong, I believe my view is right, they don't like it. Because they're like, well, hang on. Subconsciously, they're like, well, we already control everything. We also have our politicians, and we are forcing even centrist politicians to be left-wing. Why is it that someone like Charlie Kirk still exists and can talk? He shouldn't talk. That's why they're becoming more angry and radicalized. Now, we have members of Tousi TV Plus doing the promotion for us. Merkin says, join Tousi TV Plus today. Yes, listen to him. There's a QR code right here. Again, as I said, where is it gone? There we go. Join Tousi TV Plus by scanning the QR code, or just go on tousi.tv or find the link in the description. There is another. Whoop. Where is it? I just missed the stupid chat. It's fine. It's gone. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to keep you guys posted on what's going on in the Fifth Republic of France. I'm Maya Tousi, and we are the media.